Okay, today I'm going to show you how I've started, how I started to edit all my videos when I started editing them, and basically, and what I did, and take you through the process of not so much learning because that took a while and will be quite hard to explain, but the process of what I developed technique-wise, and then how I brought that onto the next video and the next one and the next one. Basically, I'm using a program called After Effects because the stuff I wanted to do, you can't really do in Premiere Pro, which is more for kind of editing the films together and editing music to them for the final product and stuff. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to edit the um, the shots themselves, so like color change in black and white, contrast and stuff like that. And as I said, I don't really know much about After Effects, so I watched a few half-hour tutorials on YouTube, and then basically what took a lot from what I knew from Photoshop and similar techniques. So once I worked out how to export and import and correctly save my documents so I could then open them in Premiere later, which I tell you was a bit of a chore. Um, I could actually finally, um, yeah, so I could, so when I did all of that, I would be able to edit them using effects and stuff that I could use on Photoshop. So when Encore finally loads up, I'll show you what I do. The computer's a bit slow at the moment. The reason behind this is because I would normally use a hard drive, but because these are Macs, my hard drive won't actually work with these, and the and the there isn't enough space and smaller kind of memory units for me to be able to save on there. So what I've been doing is I've been saving on the desktop. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll find the file. These again aren't loading because the Mac's getting a bit slow and because I'm recording on it. And I will drag that over to here and put it in there, which basically moves the file into the program but not onto the timeline, which is down here. And once it is in here, we need to move it to the timeline, which you can do a few ways. One, by pressing that, which gives you a few more options, but we don't really need them. Or I can just drag it onto the timeline. Okay, now it's on the timeline. You can see the video frame by frame, however long it is. I accidentally messed up the windows earlier, so okay, we've got a preview here, which took me a while to find. Ideally, we want that a bit bigger so we can look at it in different frame rates and stuff like that, but that, I guess, at the moment isn't overly important. Okay, so once I've got it in here, you want to make sure you've got this selected at all time, which fooled me a few times. I went onto effects. First I decided whether I wanted it in color and black and white, and at this point, because I'm recording this video afterwards, I have decided that I want them in black and white. I'm leaving the audio alone for the moment, because if I play it, which you'll hear in the original videos, it's just, the music I was listening to at the time, and I left that in because it doesn't matter, because I've decided very early on that I wanted to record my own sounds separately to give a better effect. So I'm going to go into color correction and black and white. And when it does this, I get all these levels here. And what I wanted it a bit darker. And because it was only really black, white, and yellows anyway, there isn't really much in the way that you can change. But move this forward, you can see a kind of better version of the image. You don't want it too dark, because it just looks burnt like that, so you want something in the middle. But again, keeping in mind that I'm showing this on a very small, old and rubbish TV, so I have quite a lot of leeway with, it doesn't have to be anywhere near picture perfect. Okay, so this is what I did to a lot of them, made them look a bit like that. But at the end of the day, I wanted something a lot, a lot more contrasty, a lot starker, and there wasn't really anything here for me to do to change contrast to other things. I did look at the hue and saturation, but I decided to leave that alone. Gain levels is something that I played with in Photoshop a lot, so you control the highs and the lows of the colors, and here it gave me a better opportunity to control, the kind of darks and the blacks and the contrast and stuff like that. And that's that is of course helpful. And I just did something there. Just change this window. Okay. So here I can preview it. I can change the frame rate. I can 10. Hopefully that will allow us to view it a bit more smoother because it's not having to load as many frames per second. Okay, it looks okay. It doesn't look great. Another thing I've been playing with, if I undo that, another effect that I was also using was the curves, which does a very similar thing, but gives you a bit more control. So, like traditionally on a photograph, if you want something good, you want to kind of edit it a bit like that to bring out both a good amount of highs and lows. And it's a good thing because my photography has definitely aided me in this. So here I just kind of played about, so it's like, a bit darker, a bit more contrasty. Do you want to bring out the highs at all? Maybe. And that's quite nice. And again, it's going to be on a very low res TV, so none. If it looks bad here, it should look fine there as long as I'm getting the colors and stuff that I want. Fine. So I've got an image that looks like this. It's a bit grainy, but for example, I want to add more grain, and this one took me a while to work out. Again, there'll be a lot of grain on the TV and stuff anyway, and you've got a bit of solarizing here, so I think that's solarizing. Maybe not. But, if you go too far, it'll go like that, which obviously can look kind of horrible. Although possibly cool, but not really. So another thing you want to add is grain, and one thing you want to do is you have to do this after you've edited it to black and white, because otherwise the grain will actually stay in color. So let me just find noise and grain. Okay, there's a few different options. At the end of the day, I went with add grain, and it will appear here in a minute. Okay, preview box. I'd rather the final output just because you can actually see it, and you can change the intensity. So like that, or like that. Oh, and what I said was actually wrong. So the grain must be before the black and white, but I think you can just move it up like that, and then yes, changes the grain to black and white. So you've got the intensity, it's obviously too much there. Size, far too much. You don't want anything too vivid. I'm not trying to recreate film. I just want it to look messy for a reason I'll describe in another video. You kind of want to find an okay point. Softness, move that up a bit. Not that much. You could type them in if you wanted to be more accurate, but I'm just kind of showing you what I did. The aspect ratio, which you don't want like that, because that just makes it look like white noise. Okay, so they're basically the techniques I used while editing the video in this program that I hadn't ever used before. And after a bit of exploring and playing about, that's kind of what I learned. Okay, the next bit is the tricky bit, and in other programs that I've used and stuff, it's done completely different. So if I was in Premiere Pro, I'd be like, obviously you want to save it Normally just save it as the file it gives you. That's normally a safe bet, but I googled that just in case and it was all fine. So if I go save as, untitled project, black and white, here's others, saved in the After Effects format, that's all good. Okay, what I would normally do is I would export or render it, which is here. And basically what this was doing, these weren't doing it in the correct formats, and it was taking me to weird places like the web and stuff. So after digging about for a while, I found the best way was to go into composition up here and to click make movie. This then brings up the render queue. You want to leave the best settings alone, and then you want to click here. The video format again was tricky, it took me a while to work out the best one. Don't want that, it uploads it to the internet. These are all kind of weird and complicated, and what I did, because it just kind of leaves it alone, was photo JPEG. Click OK, the rest should be fine. And then click here, you choose where you want to save it. And then after you've done that, you simply click render, and when you've done that, you end up with something which hopefully when this closes I'll be able to show you in a minute. Something instead of this, you instead end up with something like this. I don't know what you guys think, but to my ideas of what this artwork is going to, it makes it's much more what I see in my head. And that is that.